Now, tensions between the two nuclear-armed nations, India and Pakistan, are escalating with each passing day. In a tit-for-tat, India has shut its airspace for all Pakistani flights, while Pakistan continues to violate ceasefire along the LOC and the international border. In India, Jammu and Kashmir, Lieutenant Governor Manoj Sinha held parallel high-level security meeting, directing officials to dismantle the terror ecosystem by eliminating all local support networks, aiding the perpetrators. Our team of reporters from Delhi, Srinagar are now joining us live. Idris Loan is joining us from Srinagar. Idris, what is the latest given the reports that have emerged that the terrorists who carried out the Pahalgam attack had recceived the two other places before zoning down on the Baisaran meadow?
Well, there are two major updates that are coming in from the Baisaran where the attack took place. One is that the DG of National Investigative Agency has reached the spot. He's taking basically a review from the security forces who are on the ground. NIA has taken over all the investigation of the case. There was a 3D mapping done of Baisaran yesterday, and even today we are hearing that it's being done by the forces. On the other hand, we're also seeing that 4 main search operations are being carried out by security forces in Anantnag district. At one of the places, they did come close to the terrorist, and there was a brief gunfire which was heard by people in the adjacent areas. We are seeing a lot of raids being carried out by security forces, especially on the over-the-ground workers' houses. We've been told by our sources that there were around a dozen over-the-ground workers who were in constant touch with the terrorists who carried out the attack. We've also heard from our top sources in the security today that these terrorists had planned to attack basically any of the tourist places in the Kashmir region. The first plan of action was to attack in Gulmarg, which did not happen because security already is in place across Gulmarg as well as in Tangmarg. And on the other hand, they then went on to Pahalgam, where Baisaran was not the only place which was on their radar. They basically went to Adu as well as Betaab Valley, which are also tourist resorts in Pahalgam only, where they recceed along with the over-the-ground workers, and then later decided that there'll be less security present near the Baisaran meadow site, and that was one of the reasons they picked up that, because it was easier for them to carry out the attack and flee from the spot. Now investigative agencies on the spot along with the DG of NIA today carrying out all the investigation, as well as we've been told that 2 FSL teams are on the ground as well.
Right, Idris, also just for our viewers and for better understanding here, what is the latest that you can get us on the ceasefire violations that have been taking place along the LOC and the international border?
Well, it's been 7th consecutive night when Pakistan has broken ceasefire at many places. It was around 6 places there were ceasefire violations. Today also we saw in North Kashmir's 2 districts, Baramulla as well as in Kupwara, there was ceasefire violation from the Pakistani side, which was retaliated by the Indian Army. We also saw in the Jammu's Akhnur sector, there was ceasefire violation again from the Pakistani side. It's become a continuous process that Pakistan has been breaking ceasefire at various locations along the line of control, as well as on the international border, which was retaliated by the border security forces. As you said, there was a major operation that was carried out by the border security forces in the Punjab region, in one of the villages in Amritsar. A huge cache of arms and ammunition was recovered by BSF. It seems that the arms and ammunition were infiltrated into Punjab recently, and security forces timely had an input about the presence of this hideout, and it was busted by BSF as well as the Punjab police. So security, especially on the line of control and international border, on alert. If there is any skirmish, if there is any firing from the Pakistani side, it's being retaliated by the Indian forces. On the other hand, this is also the spring season, which also means that the snow on the higher reaches has started melting, and the meadows and the passes are open for the terrorists to infiltrate into Kashmir territory. And we've seen in the recent past also that Pakistan Army has always given a cover to these terror groups to basically infiltrate into the Kashmir territory, and that could be one of the reasons that we're seeing so many ceasefire violations taking place across LOC and international border.
Right. Well, Idris, thank you so much for bringing us the latest on this. We are also joined by our Assistant Editor for Foreign Affairs, Siddhant Sibal. Siddhant, thank you for joining us. The Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, had a call with India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar. What can you tell us, given that Rubio also spoke to his Pakistani counterpart? What's the latest from that?
Well, it is part of normal diplomatic activities. We know that several foreign ministers have spoken to the External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar. In fact, the Indian External Affairs Minister has now spoken to 9 out of 10 non-permanent member countries of the UNSC. The 10th one, of course, is Pakistan, and we could expect some kind of dynamics changing very fast at the UNSC, where Pakistan could try to rake up Kashmir. Now, when it comes to the conversation with Marco Rubio, the Indian side clearly emphasized that a strong action is needed against who perpetrate and support terrorism, even as Marco Rubio extended American support when it comes to fighting terrorism. But he also said that the Indian side should have a communication with the Pakistani side for de-escalation. But today it has been quiet here in Delhi. There hasn't been any development happening. In fact, the dominating story here in Delhi has been the announcement of the caste census. The External Affairs Minister, of course, spoke to the South Korean Foreign Minister. South Korea is a non-permanent member of the UNSC. But largely we know that since the terror attack has happened, there has been a strong support by the international community for India condemning the terror attack. In fact, the Israeli ambassador to India, speaking to WION, said that Israel will support India's right to self-defense. So, a lot of diplomatic engagement, and that is something that has been happening.
Right, Siddhant. Of course, a lot of diplomatic measures have also been taken, and we're seeing diplomatic parleys. We saw the meetings that took place yesterday. In light of that, is there any word or any sort of inkling on what's to happen next? What sort of a military response, if there's anything in the works right now?
Well, while this week saw a lot of engagement here in Delhi, the Prime Minister Narendra Modi held a meeting where the Defence Minister, the NSA, the CDS and the 3 service chiefs were present. There hasn't been any inkling of any kind of connecting response coming from India, even though there is a lot of warmongering coming from the Pakistani side. In fact, the Pakistani Information Minister yesterday in the wee hours announced that India is going to take a military action in next 24 to 36 hours. And that deadline comes to an end in hours from now, in approximately 1 hour from now. So there hasn't been any kind of development that can be seen or talked about in terms of any military action. India has taken a lot of diplomatic actions, including, of course, suspending the Indus Water Treaty and cutting down on the mission strength, and, of course, closing down the Wagah-Tari border. And that, it looks like, has been the response so far from the Indian side.
All right, Siddhant, thank you so much for the latest on that. We are also being joined by Anas Malik from Rawalpindi. Anas, what is the latest from Pakistan?
Well, here in Islamabad, where I am, what we know is that yesterday it was a packed day when it came to India-Pakistan times. There was a fury of press conferences that were being done. As Siddharth mentioned, the late-night statement coming in first from the Information Minister, and then that joint press conference, the more rhetorical press conference by the Pakistani military spokesperson and the Pakistani Foreign Ministers were reinforcing what they had been saying previously at different other forums. Besides that, the Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, he held a telephone conversation with US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and after that the day ended on a very interesting note, because Pakistan has now appointed a full-time national security advisor. Previously, this portfolio was being held by the Prime Minister himself, and the last time the Pakistani side had a full-time national security advisor was in 2022 April. So about 3 years later, April again, and we're seeing a full-time national security advisor being appointed. But what is also unprecedented about this move is that in a first, a serving Director General of the Inter-Services Intelligence, a serving official has been appointed. Previously, we've seen that retired military personnel had been appointed as the national security advisor. So that gives an entirely new dimension with regards to this particular thinking in Islamabad, whether they're looking for an avenue, whether they're looking for an avenue or an opening for talks, something that remains to be seen, and the answer to that will be known as we go forward. Him?
All right, Anas, thank you so much for bringing us the latest on this for now. For latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.